Okay, so in terms of the different kinds of ways that we see and respond to stress, as you can see, there are a lot of different ways of viewing the same situation. So the same situation by 4 different people could be viewed in 4 different ways. And I'll just leave you to consider which one of those you might consider yourself. But it depends on how you perceive things. So you may or may not be aware that unless it's a really massive earthquake, more people die from heart attacks in relation to earthquakes than the earthquake itself, unless it's a huge one, in which case more people die from the earthquake itself. There is actually something far more traumatic than earthquakes, and that is football, right? We are getting deep into the football season now, so you really need to start working on this aspect of your life. This was a study done in Germany during the World Cup, and they're looking at the number of heart attacks among Germans on the days the German team wasn't playing a match in the World Cup, and then they compared that to the number of heart attacks among Germans on the days the German team was playing a match in the World Cup. Now, any guesses as to what percentage increase did they notice in the number of heart attacks on the football days, particularly among men? Don't say men aren't really emotional, they are emotional about some things. Any guesses? 50? More? 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 It was 326% of what it was on an average day. Heavens above. So take a lot of care with what football team you barrack for. This is the most important message I'm going to give you tonight. So you need to do one of 2 things. You either need to start barracking for Collingwood, and I couldn't even contemplate that. That would just do me in. I don't know about you. And if you can't stomach that, then you need to have the mental flexibility that you can just change teams halfway through the last quarter of a very tight game. That is if you do barrack for Geelong, say, that you can develop the mental flexibility that you can start barracking for Collingwood late in the game anyway, just for a little while, and get over that hump of the stress of losing a grand final. But, sorry, unless it's a draw. In fact, probably everybody has a heart attack over that. So it's interesting, just the effect that our view of a situation can have. We could just be sitting back looking at the same situation, just enjoying the game, or we could be so partial and have such an attitude about the situation it becomes a huge stressor. It's not the event that determines the stress, it's the way that we view the event that determines our response, our reaction, our way of experiencing it. Epictetus was an ancient Greek who said man's not disturbed by events but by the view he takes of them. The event in itself is actually neutral. It's our attitude about the event that determines whether it's a good thing or a bad thing or a complete non-event. So the thought of Collingwood winning the AFL Grand Final 2 in a row, who would be overjoyed at that prospect? No Collingwood supporters here? No one prepared to own up to it anyway. Who'd be nauseated at the thought of Collingwood winning the AFL Grand Final? Who couldn't care less if Collingwood won the AFL Grand Final? Same event, experienced very differently. From a mindfulness perspective as well, from an awareness perspective, the event and to see our reactions, our assumptions, our judgments, our automatic pilot happening in the moment it's happening gives us the opportunity to say, oh, wait, stop a moment, have a fresh look, or take a bigger view of the situation, or not a short-term view of the situation. Oh yes, this is a challenging situation, but who knows, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. There's an old story about this chap who was living, these 2 chaps, young chaps who were living on adjacent farms, and one chap this day, his prize horse breaks out and runs off into the bush, and the guy from next door says, oh mate, that's terrible, you lost your prize horse. Oh, it's terrible. And the guy says, I don't know, is it a good thing or a bad thing? The next day, the horse comes back and he's got 20 brumbies behind him. And so he rounds them up and puts them in the pen. And the guy says, oh mate, that's great, you've got all these horses, that's tremendous. And he says, I don't know, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And the next day he's breaking in one of the horses and he gets thrown off and breaks his leg. And the guy comes in, oh mate, breaking one of the horses, you broke your leg, that's terrible. And he says, I don't know, is it a good thing or a bad thing? The next day, war breaks out and all the young men who are fit are getting marched off to war, and this guy can't go because he's got a broken leg. Oh mate, you've got a broken leg, that's great, you don't have to go to war. And he says, I don't know, is it a good thing or a bad thing? So anyway, we're very quick to judge sometimes. But events in themselves are neutral. So seeing our attitudes, our responses to those events is very important.